Welcome back to another week of Instigating with Clarkey and Drury. I'm Ryan Drury, joined by Chris Clark. We're brought to you, as always, by our friends at Coolbet Canada. We'll be chatting a little bit about them later in the show, and there's a reason why, of course. And we're also brought to you by our friends at Listowel Squash Courts, the Listowel Vision Care outlet here in Listowel, Ontario, and, of course, See the Game. Clarkey, boy, it's an exciting week. Christmas is like a week away. It's insane. What the hell happened to 2022?
Oh my God. And you know what the worst part is? I've gotten, as I hit my mic again, I do that too often. I'm still using my candle holder for the microphone. I haven't fixed that yet. If anyone's looking for a Christmas
You're an
present
innovator.
I might need something. Ryan, I have gotten one Christmas present so far this year for somebody. That's
Right.
it.
Yeah.
I haven't done my shopping yet. I'm on, honest to God, I'm not lying. And you know who that person is?
Is it
true.
me?
It's true. Did
I'm
someone
the only
drop
one.
something off for you?
Yeah, you stopped by earlier today. We're recording this on Thursday the 15th, so it's a good 9-10 days before gift opening time, and you made a point of dropping something off. Am I actually the only person you bought a gift for? That's really weird.
So far. I said so far.
Right, so far.
I'll buy them something, but like I'm a
You're a late guy. See, I got my shopping done ages ago. You
well,
leave it. So why have you done this? I have it here. Clarkey wanted me to open this on the show. I've got it here. Nicely wrapped. Really good technique.
I did that by myself.
Very good technique. A little bow on there too.
You can save the bow. You can reuse that, eh?
How about that? I will reuse it. Big reuse.
Rip it open.
I have to open this right now.
Yeah, open her up.
I'm embarrassed. Like I don't like doing this.
No. It's all good.
I don't
Just
like
rip
doing
it
this.
open. This is a very unique, and it's the start of something big. Okay,
it's the start of something big.
Yeah, he said, and when I told him I had something for him, Ryan's reaction was, "If it has a Leaf logo on it, it's going in my drawer forever." I think he said.
Yeah, like I mean, because I can't throw out gifts. Like I'm not that guy. I feel too bad
for sure.
But like if I'm not going to use it, it's going in storage.
I can tell you, this will be okay. Make sure everyone sees as you're opening this, but this will be your fave. This will be your go-to, I think, for a long time. And it's not shoes. It's just in a shoe box.
No, it's in a shoe box here. Nice.
Open her up.
Box. Okay,
open her up.
Here we go. Okay, we got a nice sweater. Oh wow.
Look at that.
A show sweater, a custom show sweater.
I bought myself one too.
And you got
I bought myself one too. There they are.
Wow. How about that?
So we got to wear these around Listowel proudly.
Oh man, wear them everywhere proudly, man. I'm gonna wear this to the Guelph Storm game. I mean, screw a suit. Like, look at this. We can be walking billboards. Billboards.
Yeah, we'll go into Krabby Joe's or somewhere and wear these, eh?
Man, yeah. We should get a beer before Christmas and wear these down. Wow, man. Thank you very much. Hey, that's
hear
really
you.
something.
I had to take my headphones out.
That's really something. How about that, eh?
What do you think?
I love it. Yeah, I'm going to wear this all over the place. I'm going to wear it tomorrow when I'm out and about doing stuff. Yeah, man. Wow. Thank you, dude. This is great. How about that?
No problem. They're available. If anyone wants to buy them, just reach out to us on Twitter. Is that how they can reach us?
Yeah, at Instigating Pod on all social media. That's Instagram, that's Facebook, that's Twitter, that's everything.
Yeah.
Wow. Look at that. The start of something big. How about that, eh?
Right?
Wow.
You like that?
Now, how about that? That's something.
I know.
Man. Wow.
And Santa Claus came to both of us too, right?
Yeah. A double stop for Santa. Early stops for St. Nick. Pretty incredible stuff. Speaking of St. Nick and I mean gifts, right? We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we got two great guests lined up on the show, which is always a gift. We love to have a great guest, right?
Aren't we going to talk about the gifts we got from our
What do you mean?
friend? Didn't we get anything else today?
Yes. Well, do you want to touch on that right now? Let's do it because I can't put on 18 sweaters, right? So let's have a look. Yes. Look at
Christmas is coming early today.
Yeah, we got our friend Jake, our guy over at Coolbet Canada, our buddy Jake, who is our wagering expert, sent us some sweatshirts. We got the toques. I got to do a wardrobe change now.
Yeah,
I
you
have
do.
to do a wardrobe change. I gotta lose my headphones. Hold on, give me a sec here, Clark.
Yeah.
Why don't you give us a little preamble? This has been in the works for a while.
It has, and we got our merch, as they say, and coming up at the end of today's show is going to be one of the most unique bets we've had on the show so far. So we'll do that. But Ryan's pulling on his Coolbet sweatshirt, his hoodie, whatever you want to call it. I got my instigating sweatshirt on. It's like Christmas. Oh, it is Christmas. For goodness sake, it's all good. Ryan, look at he's all decked out. He's all ready to go. And producer Adam, you're not left out. We got a toque for producer Adam. We'll be getting that.
Producer Adam's got a toque.
Yeah.
We did not forget about producer Adam.
Yeah.
How can we forget about producer Adam?
Yeah. So next time he's in Listowel, you can come by and pick that up. Or maybe you guys will see each other at a rink somewhere soon. Who knows?
Yeah, anyway. Absolutely. You never know. Deck the halls. How about this? We're decked out. We got show merch. We got sponsor merch. Get on Coolbet. Wager, obviously coming up this weekend, World Cup final. How about that? France trying to go back to back. I believe they'd be the first back-to-back champs since Brazil did it, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so get on there, bet. I mean, Coolbet, they're our friends, man. We love Coolbet. We love Jake, and we appreciate it. Thanks, Clarky. Thanks for doing that, man.
No problem.
We got a mix of everything. It's good stuff. All right, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, like I mentioned, two great guests coming up. First up, we'll chat with Rob Longley, our buddy, as he is going to join us from the Toronto Sun, Blue Jays beat reporter. The Jays, after sleeping a little bit through the winter meetings, they got active in free agency, and I'm sure that they're not done. We'll also chat with our friend Mark McKelvie, the play-by-play voice of the Owen Sound attack. Obviously, a big loss in the local junior hockey community. His grandpa, Ray, who was integral in bringing the Owen Sound franchise to that city, passed away a couple weeks ago. We're going to chat with Mark about his grandpa's legacy and obviously the family affair that the Owen Sound attack became for him. All right, Rob Longley coming up next here on Instigating. Welcome back to Instigating with Clarkey and Drury. Ryan Drury back here on the program with Mr. Chris Clark. And as we mentioned before the break, we're very pleased to be joined by our friend Rob Longley, longtime beat reporter of the Blue Jays with the Sun. Mr. Longley, boy, after falling asleep seemingly during the winter meetings, Ross Atkins has been pretty active, man. How are you? And what do you make of, let's start, I guess, with the Chris Bassitt move, the big one.
Yeah, maybe he just had to get out of the sunshine in San Diego. It was just a little bit too comfortable down there. Come back to the miserable gray skies and rain and whatever else we're getting. Maybe that's all it took for Mr. Atkins. Well, just to sort of rewind a little bit. Yeah, it was a little bit. I was down there last week, and it was very typical of a Blue Jays winter meetings and that nothing was happening. But that's the way these guys roll, really. You know, since I've been covering the Jays, they haven't done a whole lot at the in terms of transactions at the winter meetings specifically, but they lay a lot of the groundwork for what's to come. And, you know, you can almost set your calendar to it that within a few days of coming back that the things are going to get done. And sure enough, that's what happened with the Kiermaier signing on the weekend. And then, as you said, the big one, getting Chris Bassitt on Monday. And I think, you know, all things considered, if you evaluate the offseason so far as a whole, that's been fairly successful for them, because they were never going to get, you know, the top two guys on the free agent market in terms of starting pitchers, but they were going to be in play for the third or fourth guys. And that's exactly what Bassitt is. You know, on a lot of teams, he could be a number 2 or number 3 starter. He might not even have to be that in Toronto. He might only have to be a number 4 starter if they get any sort of bounce back from Jose Barrios. And there's a lot to like about the guy, right? I mean, he pitched 181 in the third innings last year, so he's a bit of an innings eater. And now they've got 3 guys that can do that at the front end of the rotation in Manoah and Gausman and Bassitt. And, you know, that has all kinds of benefits. Obviously, it gives you a good stout rotation, but it starts to save your bullpen. I mean, that bullpen was getting worn out last year, and it wasn't because of what Manoah and Gausman were doing. It was because of, I mean, they couldn't trust Stripling to go more than 5 innings or so, and they didn't know what they were going to get from their 4th or 5th starters. So by the end of the season, that bullpen was pretty worn out. In terms of what you like about him as a pitcher, he's a guy with, you know, 5 or 6 different pitches, which variety is the way to go these days, it seems. a fastball that's really sharp in location, not so much in velocity, and a great sinker. So, by all measures, he sounds like he's going to be a good fit there. The only alarm that you might have is that he's done all of his big league pitching in pitcher friendly ballparks in Oakland and with the Mets, but with sort of the emphasis on a better outfield this year, and he's a good pitch to contact type pitcher. I think he's a great fit for them, and instantly makes a disappointing offseason to that point somewhat of a success.
Rob, do you think we're going to see them try to stretch these guys out a little longer in the rotation this year? Maybe 7-8 innings, and oh my gosh, maybe even a complete game. Like, do you think they're going to take the pressure off the bullpen a little bit by stretching them out?
I don't think so. I mean, I think
really?
seven and change, maybe 8. That just seems to be the way this front office likes to roll. They're very big on monitoring workload and monitoring pitch count, and they're not huge on third time through the order, that kind of thing. They'll let a guy go 3 times through the order, but sort of with a leash on at that point. So it's almost as soon as a guy gets a runner on base in his third time through the order, that's pretty much it for him. That's just the way baseball is right now, and too many organizations are that way, including the Blue Jays. And like, how many times was there? There's at least half a dozen times last year, it felt like anyway, where Manoah could have pitched a complete game. He might have had to go 120 pitches to do it, but the guy's a beast, so why not let him do it? But they just don't seem to want to go down that road.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way. I will say this, though. I mean, obviously adding Bassitt for pretty good value too. And, the fact that I obviously watched him a lot in Oakland, and his last year in Oakland, when he unfortunately took that comebacker right on the face that unfortunately ended his season. That year in 2020, he was legitimately in the Cy Young mix. I'm not saying for a second he would have won it, but he was in there. Like, he was top 3 in a lot of categories, top 5. Like, the thing about him is he's got a good pitch mix. The sinker really works for him. He's got a really devastating swing and miss changeup. And like you mentioned, Rob, he does pitch to contact. Like, he's a huge ground ball hitter. He does not allow a lot of high fly contact. And if he slides in, obviously they're going to hope and want for Barrios to be the 3. But Bassitt's a really solid 3. And geez, if he ends up being your 4, it's a dynamite number 4 pitcher. And we'll see what happens at the bottom with chicken strips leaving. And we'll touch on that in a minute. But I agree with you overall. I would say getting Kiermaier, who's a plus defender. His bat is what it is, but a plus defender guy coming off the bench. And then Bassitt, I'm willing at this point now to probably give what was looking like a D- offseason so far. I'd bump them up to a B, healthy B+. Like, getting Bassitt in their rotation to eat with the big dogs, Manoah and Gausman. I really like that. Let's talk a bit about Kiermaier, though. Like, obviously he's not going to be as impactful as Bassitt, but an interesting pickup given the history between Kiermaier and the Blue Jays. We all remember the little lineup card, strategy card pickup at home plate, all that. But certainly, I think that the idea here is potentially DHing Springer more and resting him and not allowing him to be in the field to rest that weary arm.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. We had a Zoom call with him today, and he was very enthused about being on coming to Toronto. I think he sees it as a chance to revive his career. He really talked a lot about how much he liked playing at the Rogers Center, and without quite saying it, he was basically saying it's going to be nice to play in front of fans for the first time in my major league career after spending all of his major league career in Tampa, right? To actually have a home crowd night after night after night. He essentially said that. But to me, what I found very interesting is he had hip surgery in the offseason. He says he's feeling really good. So 2 things that really struck me. One was he basically said that center field is mine and it's mine to lose. So that discussion has been had internally that management and George Springer are okay with that. And that creates the opportunity of moving Springer over to right field a fair bit of the time, or DH. And I think what that does is it really preserves George, as you said, Ryan, because he's Not unlike Kiermaier, he said, it's very difficult for him to get 140 games into a season. So any pressure you can take off the legs and off the arm is a good thing. And not only that, all of a sudden, Kiermaier is one of the best defensive center fielders in baseball. And, Springer is at least an average center fielder. So how good will he be over in right field? He'll be an outstanding right fielder. And if those two have chemistry in the outfield, then all of a sudden their outfield defense gets dramatically better. Because I'm led to believe that one of a handful of reasons that the Jays were willing to trade Hernandez was that they were never satisfied with his defense. Obviously, he improved a great deal from when he was terrible when they first got him. But you could see the laziness out there and the uncertainty and the lack of confidence, even on routine fly balls at times. And it's, he wasn't as bad as he was earlier in his career in Toronto, but there were days when you felt that Teoscar Hernandez was a real liability out in right field. So if you have Kiermaier patrolling center and you can slide Hernandez over to, slide Springer over to right, all of a sudden you've got one of the better outfields in the American League. And if he said it once this offseason, he probably said it 50 times, Ross Atkins, that the focus for the offseason was run prevention. And he wasn't just talking about starting pitching in the bullpen. He was talking about playing better defense as well.
When they traded Hernandez, the question was, well, what are you going to replace him with out there? But then obviously they got Kiermaier. I would love to know the inner workings and how things go down. Like, do you think they knew they were going to land a big guy in the outfield when they traded Hernandez and the timing just didn't work out for it? Or was this, let's trade him and let's work on it? What do you think?
Probably a mix of both. I would have to think that they, and I'm not even sure that Kiermaier was their number one choice, and maybe they're still going to get somebody else because in a lot of ways, Kiermaier profiles as a fourth outfielder, and you can put him in mid-game as a defensive replacement if you need to as well. But I have to believe that when they traded Hernandez, that they had enough people on their radar, whether it be half a dozen or more, that we're definitely going to get an out. I mean, it's our next to getting another starter, that was goal number 2. And they were reasonably confident that they were going to be able to do that because really the only other option at that point was putting Kevin Biggio out there or maybe Gabby Moreno, who's never played that out there in the big leagues. He's a very athletic guy, and he worked on his outfield during the season last year with the outfielders coach Mark Budzinski. But, that's kind of a wish and a prayer for a contending team if you're going to put one of those guys out in right field regularly. So, I think when they dealt Hernandez, they had to know that they were going to get somebody, whether it was going to come through free agency. And, they do have trade chips. And if they weren't able to get a free agent, then maybe they would have had to trade for somebody.
You mentioned Moreno, still 3 catchers if they don't move him to the outfield. Do you see a move? Do you see something happening there, trade wise?
It'll be, I think only if the value were right. Ran into Ernie Witt down in San Diego last week. He's obviously managing the Canadian team at the World Baseball Classic. And I asked him what he thought of the Jays catching situation. He says, I love it. He says, I love it. You're only one foul tip away from having 2, right? 2 catchers. They get one guy foul tip in the wrong spot, and it's you're in a situation. I thought Atkins was pretty eloquent in the way he described it. And now obviously he knew what he was saying, and he's pumping up his guys in case he's able to trade one of them. He said that he would be fine to have 3 catchers on the roster, and then he made a strong case for each of the guys that he has. Danny Jansen they love for a lot of reasons. Defensively, he's pretty good, but the main thing they love about him is how closely and how well he works with all of the pitchers, whether it be starters or relievers. And he's almost like a coach that way. They get good feedback from him on what he's seeing behind the plate in terms of how each guy's dealing. Moreno, they love his athleticism, and obviously he's the top prospect in the organization right now. They believe that they could shift him to the infield if they had to, or to the outfield. But they believe that he's very athletic and that he has a bright future. And you don't want to deal a guy like that unless you're getting a lot in return. And the other point that he made was he thinks that Alejandro Kirk is the arguably the best bat in the lineup, the most consistent bat in the lineup, a guy that you're going to have hitting somewhere between 3 and 5 and you don't want to get rid of a guy like that. So he made it sound like he'd be content if they had to keep all three. I don't think that's the ideal scenario. I think that's why I don't think their offseason is done. I think one of those guys gets moved either for a fifth starter or another outfielder. But they're not going to do, I guess his point was they're not going to move one of those catchers who they value each of them for their own reasons. They're not going to move them for nothing, right?
Yeah. No,
and the currency is like Jansen, you're not going to get as much for, right?
Right.
So
Kirk's probably the guy.
So the other Kirk's probably the guy, and they say they like his bat too much.
They do. Yeah.
Unless you replace Hernandez's production, then can you afford to get rid of Kirk and Hernandez? Kiermaier's not going to replace that kind of offense at all. Not even close.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think that obviously Jansen would have the least value simply because of his age. Yeah. And, when he was healthy down the stretch last year, he actually showed off quite a bit of pop, surprisingly. But in my estimation, I'm kind of riding your wavelength there, Clarkey. I wonder what you think of this, Rob. I think Jansen will stay simply because of the dynamic and the relationship he has with the pitching core, and the fact that I think he's the best defensive catcher on the roster by some way. I actually think he's one of the more underrated defensive catchers in the league, and he's a veteran guy, and on a contending team, you want to have a veteran dude back there. You got to have somebody like that in the mix. So now you're kind of flipping the coin on one of the other two guys, and it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? Moreno, some people think he's the best prospect in baseball currently. Most people that rate prospect systems and farm systems have him at least top 5. And he's got this incredible athleticism, but what is he really yet? And then you've got Kirk, who had a great season in terms of consistent contact and on base percentage. Not the best defensive guy, though. So one of those two, I feel like, is likely going to be on the out, but I would only trade one of them, Rob, if I felt like I was going to get a really solid left-handed bat, which is the one thing the Jays are still missing. Just anybody left-handed that's a pretty solid hitter. There's a guy, I don't know how much of an appetite they necessarily have for this because outfield is looking a little crowded right now. There's a guy in Pittsburgh who's 28 years old named Brian Reynolds, who's an unbelievable base runner. He's one of the fastest players on the bases in Major League Baseball, and he wants out. And the Pittsburgh Pirates could really, really do with a young catcher to kind of build the infield around. Is that resembling something in your mind of what they might do?
Yeah, no, that's basically exactly it, Ryan. I think the guy you mentioned, Brian Reynolds, is certainly. I'm led to believe they've had some contact with the Pirates about him. And it's further to my point. I don't think they're going to move either of those guys unless they get exactly what they want and what they need. And a left-handed bat is exactly what they need, right? And I don't think they see the outfield as crowded at this point either. I mean, remember they basically had 5 for a lot of last year.
You're right.
And I don't think they see, as much as Kiermaier sees himself as an everyday player by his standards is probably 120 or 130 games. And Springer's maybe 140 if he stays healthy. So you're going to need another outfielder out there. And ideally you're going to have one that's a left-handed bat to suddenly balance out that lineup handed-wise a little bit. And so I think that's the way they'll go with that. You make a good point about Jansen too, and I meant to mention that is I think he's become a sneaky good hitter. Towards the end of the 2021 season, he started to show some of that pop, and it was around this time last year during the lockout. I was down there. I was talking to a few guys, and I talked to him at that point. He said that he's really altered his approach and just sort of went back to being who he was, and he always thought he was a guy with some pop, and he showed it at times last year. Obviously he had another injury during the season, but if you bookend the season, he showed some of that power at the start and at the finish. And I think the Jays value that bat or the potential of that bat amongst all the other things that they value about Danny Jansen, plus the fact that you're not going to get a whole lot in return for him, plus the fact, as you mentioned, if you're on a contending team, you cannot go into a season with Alejandro Kirk and Gabby Moreno as your catchers. You need a veteran guy to handle that pitching staff and to sort of lead the way behind the plate, because it's too important of a position to sort of not have a veteran guy in there. And we can call Danny Jansen a veteran now.
Yeah,
he's been around long enough.
Mm-hmm. I do wonder too, like the only other thing that I would want for either of those guys would be like a top tier 100-mile-an-hour flamethrower in the bullpen, because that's one thing that they still don't really have either. Romano, we saw him touch 99 a couple times last year, but they still don't have that great big bazooka coming out of the bullpen, which is something that I'm sure they'll try and chase, but that might be more of an in-season / trade deadline thing. I want to ask you about a couple of the other moves around Major League Baseball. Let's start obviously with Aaron Judge. He kind of danced around it. He was spotted in San Fran. They were courting him and whatever. Ends up staying a Yankee. Obviously, that's huge for New York. But then San Fran, boy, they just turned around and splashed the cash elsewhere. They signed chicken strips. And there's rumor that Rodon might re-sign there. But boy, oh boy, did they ever back up the Brinks truck for Correa. Holy cow. What do you make of both those moves? Judge obviously staying in New York, and what the Giants ended up doing.
The Judge thing was basically a stroke of brilliance by Judge and his handlers right from the start, right? Turning down that big contract before last season, betting on himself, knowing the money would be there from the Yankees this offseason, playing it against San Francisco. And there was a big fuss on Tuesday because he was on the sidelines at the Monday night game in Tampa, and then he was coming to San Diego on Tuesday, and everybody thought he was coming to San Diego to sign a contract with the Yankees. Well, he was coming to San Diego to be wooed by the Padres. So now all of a sudden he's got 3 suitors, and the Padres, to my understanding, offered quite a big bunch of money as well. So now he could just walk back to the Yankees and say, "Okay, boys, this is it. This is what it's going to take." And probably wanted to be a Yankee all along, remain a Yankee all along, but played it to perfection. And now he's a Yankee for life, and he's got his own Brinks truck full of money. And the Giants, they just remain one of the most aggressive teams when it comes to adding to their roster. Like it's almost like the California money shift has moved up the coast from Los Angeles to San Francisco. I mean, the Dodgers still pay people, but the Giants are in on everybody, it seems, and continue to go that way. I find the Stripling signing somewhat interesting. I'm not sure where he fits there. You'd probably use him as a fifth type starter, but with the option in that contract, it's fairly low risk. I'm not surprised that Stripling didn't come back to Toronto either. I think that there was a sense around some with the Blue Jays that a one-hit wonder would be a bit too harsh, but he had one good season. It was invaluable for the Jays rotation when Ryu left and Kikuchi couldn't get anybody out. They needed a guy like that to step in, but do you really want to give a guy like that a lot of term and a lot of money on based on one decent season? It would have been a tough ask. And once the Jays were able to get Bassitt, then it was clear that Stripling was going to go elsewhere.
Yeah, for sure. And no disrespect to chicken strips. You're right. He was vital last year. I don't think they make the playoffs without some of the heroism that he stepped up with, for sure. But Chris Bassitt is just head and shoulders a better pitcher. I got one last thing to ask you, Rob. With what we've seen out of Boston, which they're freaking out there. Like, I mean, Chaim Bloom has a lot of people banging on his door with pitchforks and torches. It's not a fun time in Boston. Baltimore still young and kind of up and coming. The Yankees are what they are, a very veteran squad. As you look now at the landscape currently, is the AL East the Jays to lose in 2023 with the roster as is right now?
It's funny. We probably said that it was last year, right? And I think a lot of people believe that. But I think rosters as they're set right now, that it's probably more so the case that the Jays would be the favorite to win that division, because the Yankees were like in desperate straits. If they didn't get a Judge, where were they going to be? And we saw a lot of flaws in that team last year, even with Judge having the kind of season that he did. I'm kind of with you. Like, obviously the Rays have made a downturn, and who knows what's going on at Fenway Park. It's the Jays and the Orioles could be the two best teams in that division, which is crazy. And that brings me back to one of your further points in that your earlier points in that we talk about Atkins talks about this all the time, that there's several times during the year where you can improve. You can do it in the off season through trade. You can do it in the off season through free agency. You can do it through developing and promoting your own players, and you can do it at the trade deadline. They may right now feel that their team is strong enough and the division has weakened enough. It's not weak, but it has weakened, that they can enter the season with pretty much what they have now and then be an aggressive buyer at the trade deadline and load up for a playoff run. And, that might not be a terrible philosophy to have right now, because there will be sellers come deadline time. And whether it's an outfielder with pop that you need at that point, or whether it's another starter, or like you said, a fireballer at the back end of the rotation, those are the types of guys that become available at the trade deadline. And maybe the Jays roster building isn't complete until the end of August when that comes by.
Yeah. Rob, before we let you go, I have one last one too. You wrote about it today, the Jays broadcast. Buck Martinez on with Bob McCowan's podcast today, and it looks like Pat Tabler won't be back for sure. They've announced that, but it looks like he might have been blindsided by Rogers on this one. Fill us in. What exactly Buck said?
Basically, he said, but Buck was crushed by it, by the sounds of it. I mean, he was both Buck and Pat Tabler's contracts expired at the end of last year, and as is often the case for longtime broadcasters like that, they expect it to be an easy renewal and carry on. But the dynamic of that booth is changing because Dan Schulman's committed to doing more games than he had at any other point, and Rogers decided to just move on from Pat Tabler, and it caught Tabler off guard, and it certainly caught Buck off guard. And Buck was very outspoken about it on that podcast, as you mentioned, Clarkey, saying that it's, there's no loyalty, there's no appreciation for a job well done, and all that kind of stuff. And so now we're left to wonder what's going to happen in the broadcast booth for the season. They're obviously going to need a third body, because I don't think Buck will work anywhere close to a full schedule given his health issues. And I'm led to believe that Joe Siddall will be doing a good chunk of games, moving from a studio analyst to a game analyst. And I think that would be an outstanding move.
He's good.
I think he's one of the sharpest analysts in the game right now. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe Pat Tabler's time was running out a little bit. Maybe the game had passed him by a little bit, but it just doesn't sound like it was handled particularly well by Rogers. And we see that throughout the broadcast industry these days. It's just a lot of flux and a lot of instability, and that's what happened here apparently.
And a lot of big money talent getting let go. Bottom line,
absolutely,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you're right. End of an era for sure. But
hey, one more thing.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I know you used to cover the Leafs. They're going for their 16th game tonight without a loss in New York. Mitch Marner, 23 games with a point. Are those streaks going to be extended?
Yes and no. So no and yes. Leafs lose, and Marner gets a point.
No, they have to win.
Do you want to hear my Marner rant though?
Yeah,
I have a Marner rant. It's dated. It's dated now because I'm accepting of the streak now. But when I didn't appreciate all of the hoopla surrounding it. When he matched the Maple Leafs record and set the Maple Leafs record, that's notable for sure, right? It's one of the oldest franchises in hockey, and passed some pretty significant people. But as he went on to get to 18 and 19 and 20, it was making it sound like he was this was one of the greatest streaks in the history of the game. Well,
51.
when he hit 21, he was only 30 off the record.
Exactly.
It was Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah,
but but at that point he was tied for 30th for the longest streak.
Yeah.
So now he's getting into that territory. I think I calculated that if he gets to 26, it's really significant. And the only guys above him now are Hall of Famers, essentially. Patrick Kane's one of the guys above him, and he'll probably be a Hall of Famer. But it's basically Hall of Famers above him now. And if he somehow gets it to 26 or 28 and gets it in the top 10, then I'm really impressed. But early on, I was like, wait a minute, this is getting a little bit out of control for a guy who just set a Leaf record. What about the league record?
Yeah,
we're not even halfway there yet.
You're not saying Leaf fans are overreacting about anything, are you?
Well,
I wouldn't say anything like that.
That doesn't happen down there.
I think Leafs win, I think it's the other way around. Leafs win, Marner streak.
Stops. I will say, prices? Go ahead, Rob.
What are the prices on this game tonight? That's the question.
We'll have to
Where's the value?
Ryan.
Who's favorite?
Where's the cool bet?
Right.
I'm not sure. I didn't look at the odds before we came on. I will say he is 3 back. Yes, Patrick Kane is the active leader. He had a 26 game point streak 3 seasons ago, if my math's correct, and he was dynamite that year. All right, Rob, thanks so much for doing this, man. Happy holidays, and we're it's winter time, but we're looking forward to some Jays baseball. It can't get here soon enough. Thanks for doing this, my friend.
No problem, guys. We passed the off-season solstice, as I like to call it. We are now closer to pitchers and catchers than we are to wild card Saturday. So there you go.
Nice. There you go.
Nothing wrong with that.
Have a good one, boys.
You too.
See you, Rob.
All
Thank
right.
you.
We'll take a quick break. When we come back, Mark McKelvie, the voice of the Owen Sound Attack, will join us next to remember his grandpa who passed away a couple weeks ago. Obviously, very integral Ray McKelvie was in bringing the Attack franchise to Owen Sound. That's coming up next here on Instigating. Welcome back to Instigating with Clarkey and Drury, brought to you as always by our friends at Coolbet Canada. Thanks to our buddy Rob Longley, the Jays beat reporter for The Sun, for joining us in the last segment. As I mentioned, 2 great special guests this week. Very pleased now to be joined by the voice of the Owen Sound Attack, Mr. Mark McKelvie. McKelvie, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty well. How are things going, Ryan?
Things are good, man. I mean, it's not like I haven't just seen you pretty recently in Guelph with the Attack and Storm in their usual Highway 6 clashes. Obviously wanted to bring you on, though, because sad news, obviously, just recently, your grandpa, Ray McKelvie, who was a pretty special man and somebody who was a giant in terms of junior hockey in the local sports scene in Owen Sound, passing away at 87. Obviously, you and your grandpa are extremely close. I know that. I met him a number of times when I actually filled in for you on the Attack crew. Just a dynamite guy that loved hockey. And man, did he ever love the Owen Sound Attack, Mark.
Yeah, he did. It still doesn't feel real having lost him just yet. Going to the rink, I've only been to the Bayshore once since he passed, and obviously, I guess a couple times, one weekend, and it just didn't feel real. And I know it'll take a little bit of time for it to sink in, but there's a lot of people that have been reaching out over the last few weeks, sharing their memories and their stories. And obviously, it's very comforting during this time. He was there since day one with the OHL. In Owen Sound, and goes back even further with his involvement in junior hockey. At one point, overseeing the Owen Sound Grays, their junior B club. They even had a foray into Tier 2 at one time as well. And then it goes back to getting involved with minor hockey. And I think that's probably something a lot of people that have known him recently probably weren't well aware of, just how involved he was with minor hockey for quite some time. So to your point, really involved with the Attack, and that's probably what he's most well known for. But as well, he just loved his community and being involved any way he could.
Yeah, you're right. Like, he was involved way before, the Attack were even really a thing, because, like, if I'm not mistaken, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, he got inducted into the Owen Sound Sports Hall of Fame in like 1993. That was, just after Owen Sound kind of moved there. They were still the Platers then, obviously moved from Guelph, but like, he had been recognized for his contributions long before the Attack became a thing.
Yeah, exactly. And, you think about it, that's probably only about 3 or 4 seasons into existence for the then Owen Sound Platers. But he obviously, I've heard from a lot of people that were there day one when the OHL came to Owen Sound, and just how much belief he had that the market could work. And there would have been a lot of skeptical people at the time. I mean, people were still skeptical about 20 years ago when there was that shift from the Platers to the Attack that it would work. And, my grandfather, when he was feated for winning the OHL's Bill Long Award for his contributions to the OHL. I remember him saying in the speech just the fact that he thought through great management, through a great ownership group and a great community, that the Attack had probably become one of the more stable franchises in the Ontario Hockey League. So he always had that belief, and I'm so glad it came to fruition. And I'll always remember that day back in 2011 when the Attack won their first OHL championship, and just seeing the look on his face and my grandmother's face. You can imagine how many hours they had poured in to that franchise over the years, and going back even further to finally have a championship. That was something really special, and it was a long time coming for them.
Yeah, it really was. And I mean, like, take us right back, because, for people that maybe don't realize, yeah, he's literally a day one Attack lifer, Owen Sound junior hockey lifer. Like, he was a huge reason why the then Holiday family, of course, who owned the Guelph Platers at the time, and of course, Guelph later got the Storm back in town, and they're still around. But at the time, the Holidays were moving from Guelph, and he was a huge, huge contributor in convincing them to move the franchise to Owen Sound and that it would work. I'm sure he's told you many stories about that time, Mark.
Yeah. And you know what? It's one of those things that as I got a little bit older, you wanted to investigate a little bit more. So I probably found myself in recent years asking more questions about how all this all came to be. But to your point, he did a great job, obviously, convincing the Holiday family to come to Owen Sound. I can imagine they would have been a little reserved at the time, just with the idea of they weren't getting the support they were looking for in Guelph, and now you're going to a really small market based on the other centers in the league. But like I said, I think my grandfather just had such he had his finger on the pulse of the way that the community works and the support that's out there. And I think you see it all the time, especially when it comes to fundraisers or anything along those sorts within the Owen Sound community. People really step up. And I think my grandfather knew that something like the Ontario Hockey League coming to Owen Sound, people would really support, that they would get behind. And obviously you had to have the numbers when it came to season tickets to really prove yourself at the start. They got that, and it obviously really continued. And it just shows today with the ownership group that they have, the group that came in, especially when it looked like we weren't going to see OHL hockey in Owen Sound anymore, to get some great local business people involved who probably had the same feeling that my grandfather did, that this community could support OHL hockey and that there was enough passion there and enough, you got to think about the dollars and cents as well. Dr. Bob Severs, who's the president of the Owen Sound Attack, one of their owners, recently talked about the fact that you look at the economic impact that the franchise has within that community, the restaurants, the hotels, the gas stations, and then as well, he brought up a really good point when talking about my grandfather about how many people within that community probably got their first job from my grandfather coming to work the concession stands, selling popcorn or selling programs or 50-50 tickets. So you just see what a cycle it is there. And you can imagine, you probably saw it, Ryan, when you were at the Bayshore. It was pretty tough to get my grandfather probably from point A to point B, because he had to stop to talk to about 10 or 15 people along the way. I would always look across to section T where he sits. He had his spot. I could see it right from the press box. A lot of the times he might miss the opening puck drop, never for the first period, but for periods 2 and 3, because he was stuck on the concourse still talking to somebody and trying to get back to his seat. So he just loved his community, loved everybody a part of it. And I think I'm very fortunate over the last several years to have been there on a more consistent basis and to just seeing that passion up close.
Yeah, I mean, obviously an incredibly popular guy, and for good reason. And I mean, like I said, a lifer with the franchise. Like, he was integral in bringing it there, served as GM briefly for a period of time and in the hockey ops department. Then, of course, as you mentioned, when the new ownership came in and they became the Attack, I believe that was in 2000. He's been the business director, and he served in that role right up until his health unfortunately started to fail. And he passed away. Like, he was literally working in the front office of this organization right up until his passing. I mean, talk about doing something that you love right up until the end. And he did that. It's just an incredibly special legacy, one that I'm sure you and your family are rightly proud of, Mark.
Yeah, of course. I mean, how many times I would tell people about my grandfather that didn't know him already, or you'd meet someone and you'd be talking a bit about your family and you'd mention how he still goes down to the office every single day. And they'd say, well, how old is he? And he said, well, he's in his 80s. I mean, there's not many people that are doing that. And that's just what he loved. I think that's what kept him motivated. He was a hard worker right from day one, obviously. And I've heard some stories about him when he was younger, but that work ethic, it never dwindled. It was always there. And that's what kept him going. That's what kept him motivated, was to constantly be working. And you think about even going back to the 90s, he starts to retire and move into a different phase of his life when he retired full-time from being an accountant. He was a partner within BDO. he retires and then he becomes general manager. So he's out scouting all the time. He's going to see games. He's constantly on the road. So there was no slowing him down. And I truly believe over the last couple of years, we lost my grandmother almost 2 years ago. I really think if it had not been for the attack, I'm not really sure how things would have gone the last couple of years, because his health was starting to take a turn. But he didn't let people know that. He wanted to be at the rink and he'd battle through it. And if he had to take some treatments, he would do it. And then he'd find his way down to the post office and the bank and then down to the office. That's where he wanted to be. And it just kept him going every single day. So I have to say that, having that within his life the last little while was very important. And I'm just glad I got to spend a lot of that time with him.
Yeah, it's incredibly special, obviously, your relationship with your grandpa, regardless. But the fact that the two of you are now so integrally tied to the Attack franchise, because, of course, fans know you as the play-by-play voice of the team. And, I'm not just saying this because we're friends. For my money, you're one of the best play-by-play guys in junior hockey, Mark. So it's just really cool that you had that a really unique relationship with your grandpa, who, as you mentioned, was obviously bang on with Owen Sound. I mean, the city is unbelievably passionate about the Attack. I love going to the old Bayshore. It's got so much character. It's one of those rinks that's still around that's just, I don't know, it's got a soul to it. Mm-hmm. And when they fill it up and it's playoff time, the low ceiling, like it gets rocking in there, man. Tell us a little bit about what that atmosphere is like and what it's like for the city when the team, I mean, they always care about them, but especially when the team's doing well, even around that 2011 championship. What is it like? Like, it's a lasting legacy and he's a big part of it. What makes Owen Sound such a special junior hockey town in your mind, Mark?
Well, you do wonder if there's a little bit of that underdog mentality that even goes from the organization right into the fan base and the entire community. You see some of the bigger centers come into Owen Sound and they've had their success and their fame, and there's always that little chip on their shoulder. And I do wonder if a lot of that is what brings so much of the passion out as well. I think it is, when you talk about a market that loves their hockey, the main reason for it is, what else are you going to do on a Saturday night? I mean, that's the place to be. That's the social scene, is to go to the Bayshore on a Saturday night. Just go walk the concourse between periods and you'll see the lineup for concessions or at the beer stands. And then there's an additional lineup of people just talking and everybody mingling. You go to other places and you don't always necessarily see that. You see a lot of people bringing their families, and obviously there's a lot of families at the Bayshore, but everyone knows each other. The kids are running around with each other. The parents are talking. I think it is just that small town Saturday night feel that makes so much of the passion and the character that you talked about when it comes to the Bayshore and the Owen Sound Attack. And I think that's probably a lot of what my grandfather loved about it was a community outing. He was always involved in different initiatives. He always went and contributed his time to committees within the city, whether that was in sports or right with the city itself. He liked to be involved. And I think when you look at just the turnout on a Saturday night, like I said, for an Owen Sound Attack game, you see the entire community, and that's what he loves, bringing people together. So like you mentioned, I'm really lucky to call games in Owen Sound, and I appreciate your compliment. It's one thing when I first started calling games in Owen Sound, I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder myself to prove that I didn't just get an opportunity because my grandfather was involved with the team. Obviously, that got me more familiar with the folks in Owen Sound. I mean, Fred Wallace gave me one of my first opportunities to jump on a broadcast of an OHL game, to jump into the booth and do color commentary with him. So obviously, I've had a lot of people help me out. But at the same time, you want to prove yourself. And I think it was extra motivation for me to not let my grandfather down, to not have people maybe not kind of avoiding the topic, not talking to him in case I wasn't so good or I wasn't doing a good enough job. I don't think that was ever the case. I know he was pretty proud, and that's something that I'll continue to carry with me as I go forward.
Well, hey, man, you know this. I know this, of course, too. The broadcasting world, you need people to stick their neck out for you. That's just the way it is. So, but you've certainly carved your own path, and you've done a damn good job of it, too. I know as well, obviously, he was bang on with Owen Sound. You look in the Western Hockey League, there's a lot of like small city centers, some even smaller than Owen Sound. That's where the junior hockey team is. I mean, he probably looked at that and saw a similar model. And you look at some of the players they've cranked out. Nick Suzuki, of course, most recently. Talk about Sean Dursey, Bobby Ryan, Jordan Bennington. Like, they've had a lot of good players come through. Sakara. I mean, a lot of great players have played and plied their trade and learned how to be pros in Owen Sound. But one thing I know that you and your family, and I'm sure your grandpa too, were very passionate about is horses and horse racing. I know you guys are a big horse racing family, and that was something that he really loved too.
Yeah, it was. A lot of people within the community, like I said, would know him from his time with the Platers and the Attack. But there was a time when he was part of a group running a racetrack in Owen Sound back in the 70s at the fairgrounds there. They regularly raced. They had standardbreds there that raced weekly, and he was involved with that, running it at one point. And then he got involved in racehorse ownership. He owned horses for quite some time as well. So he was always pretty passionate about racing. And I guess it's safe to say he gave the hockey and horses bug to my dad, which then passed down to me. So multiple generations in both industries, which I think we're all pretty proud of. There wasn't many nights that went by that I didn't get a call from my grandfather asking if I liked anything that night that he could maybe make a bet on. So that was kind of his routine, especially in the last several years. He'd usually bet the first 5 races each night at Mohawk and then see how he does. If he's up a little money, he'd then bet the next 5 races, go to sleep, not stay up for the last 5, just so he could wake up in the morning to check the results to see how he did. Or if he happened to wake up maybe needing a glass of water, he could flip it on and might catch his last race. So he loved watching the races every single night as well in between hockey games. And that was usually his nightly routine.
Well, man, he certainly left a heck of a legacy, a unique legacy. And if I could throw a hockey term toward him, just what a grinder, just an absolute grinder that, went right to the wall for the franchise, believed in it from day one. And I really hope that Owen Sound fans now and in the future can reflect back and know just how big of a contribution he made to what's become a model franchise in junior hockey. Mark, I really appreciate you coming on and chatting about your grandpa Ray. What an incredible dude. I'm lucky to say I got to meet him a couple times. He was always great to me. Thanks so much for doing this, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I appreciate you giving me the chance to talk a little bit about his life and legacy. And to the point that you just mentioned there, there's certainly some ideas spinning in the back of my mind, ways that we can carry on his legacy. Like I said, he loved his community so much. He loved kids getting involved in sports. So maybe I can find a way to bring that all together down the road to kind of honor him. I'm certainly thinking of some ideas, and he's going to be greatly missed, but I know he'll still be with us every day, especially in the Bayshore.
100%, man. Well, I know you're going to come up with something special, and when you do, let us know, because we'd like to tell people about it. Mark McKelvie, the voice of the Owen Sound Attack. All right, we'll take one last quick break, and Clarkey and I will come back. Apparently, someone is going to jump on here that wants to make a bet with Clarkey against his Maple Leafs. Something about the Rangers game. I'm not sure. We'll touch on that next here on Instigating. Back to wrap things up here on Instigating with Clarkey and Drury. Thanks again to our friends Rob Longley, the longtime beat reporter of the Jays with Toronto Sun, and Mark McKelvie, the voice of the Owen Sound Attack, for joining us this week. We have one last special guest.
It's a big night.
Ryan Duck. It's a big night. We're recording this again on Thursday. The Leafs are playing the Rangers. Ryan Duck, who many people will remember around here, been involved in junior hockey for a long time, currently the equipment manager with the Stratford Warriors. But more importantly tonight, he's one Chris Clark's son-in-law. And
that's my grandson, Riker, with him.
That's the grandson. And he's clearly a Rangers fan. So, Ducker, you're on the show. The floor is yours. You have a wager to put at the feet of Mr. Clark here. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Chris, unfortunately, is a Leaf fan, and we won't hold that against him. But as everyone knows, I'm a huge Ranger fan, and Riker and I are here to pose a bet to him tonight. I can't wait to see him, and hopefully he'll take it. But I'm suggesting that if the Rangers win tonight, he's going to wear a nice Rangers jersey on your podcast next show. And if the Leafs somehow pull it off, I'll be stuck wearing a Leaf jersey at some time of Chris's leisure. But Marner's point streak's coming to an end tonight, and that's what I'm at with it.
So let me get this straight. I can tell you what event you're going to wear the jersey at. It's not like you're going to wear it if you're doing an oil change or something like that, right? I get to pick it.
Yeah, it's got to be within reason, of course. It's
no, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, I'll honor the bet.
Okay.
I don't see that's going to be a problem because we're going to be wearing it on the podcast next week. But no, absolutely, that's what we're here for. And Riker's on board too. We'll maybe even let him wear the Leaf jersey.
Riker, What team is this? Whose team is this?
My team.
Yucky.
Your team? Did he say my team?
He said yucky team.
Oh no, he didn't.
This is great.
Extended tonight?
No.
He's on board with Dad. He's on board with Dad. He knows who his teammate is.
Riker's been on skates this week. He's starting to learn how to skate. Of course, got a great instructor. My daughter is a great figure skater, and he was. Were you on the ice this week? Were you skating, Riker?
Are you skating with Mom?
Oh.
Yeah, he's already skating better than I ever was. So she's doing something right.
There you go. Yeah, and he's
in hand.
Right, Drury. He's also hooked on the Mighty Ducks movie. Apparently, he's been watching that every day. So, yeah,
we actually just finished Mighty Ducks 2, and now we're waiting on MSG to come live here. So
there you go.
A hockey day for you, hasn't it, bud?
The boys.
Yeah, the boys.
The boys.
Unreal.
Go boys.
The boys.
Yeah.
Ducks fly together. Never forget.
Absolutely.
And you can see Riker at a lot of Warriors game in Stratford. There you go. And of course,
absolutely,
Brian.
He's one of their biggest fans.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Right on.
All
right, we're on.
Sounds like a deal. Enjoy the game tonight, and can't wait to touch base with you later.
Sounds good.
Good stuff, Ducker. Thanks.
Go Leafs, go. Riker, go Leafs, go. Go Leafs, go.
All right. The bet is official. That's it for us this week on Instigating. We appreciate everybody listening and watching. Remember, you can watch this show Friday nights at 8, Sunday nights at 9 with our friends on Whiteman TV. We debut on our YouTube channel Friday nights at 9. Follow us on social media at Instigating Pod. And remember, hey, if you want an Instigating shirt like Clarkey and I have now, you can get in contact with us there and we'll hook you up. All right. Thanks for watching. We got one more show coming up next week before Christmas, and then we'll take a 2-week break. Thanks for listening and watching Instigating. We'll be back next week.